Hi Marcel, how are you?
Hi, Larry. I'm fine. How are you?
Yeah, I'm not too bad at all. I wouldn't. I tried pronouncing your surname earlier. Sure, I got it wrong, so I
It
wouldn't try
was
it
great.
again.
It was
All right,
great.
what I would do is yeah, what I'll do, I'll just let everyone know that Marcel is gonna give us the talk on autonomous things, autonomous testing. Sorry, my bad. And how to introduce testing bots to boost your efficiency and speed. This will be very interesting. I think I'll be paying close attention and taking notes myself.
Okay, let's see
All
whether
right. So,
you
yeah,
will like
without
it.
further ado, Marcel, I think the mic is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I don't know whether you could see my slides already. Hopefully, yes. Yeah, I can see it. So hopefully you too. So welcome. I would like to talk about something I'm passionate about maybe last 2 years, and this is autonomous testing. And I researching the area and idea and topic and approach in that space because I believe this is a next era of software testing. And today I decided to talk about testing bots. So let me start first with very short story before we will go into the details. So it's already a couple of years when GitLab started with one survey. They call it DevSecOps survey for DevSecOps report. And they just find out that people following some DevOps approach always complain about testing. And they are saying that this is the number one reason for delays in delivering of the software. When I saw it first time, I felt like that's a stupid conclusion, but it was proven 4 times in a row. It was the people get that answer a couple of times in a row, and being in software testing 19 years, it's pretty painful for me. So, and I heard a lot of other type of complaints, like some people saying that testing is too expensive, or test automation is too hard, or testing is boring even for some people, or testing is too slow. But for me, testing is always fun. I really love that. That's the number one thing in my professional career. I never experienced better activities than testing. You could uh, imagine that as a test coordination, planning, automation, execution, bug reporting, and so on. I really enjoy that. So I was about sorry about that conclusion, but I believe there could be some better testing because I would start thinking about it, what this really means, and what I experienced for that couple of years I'm spending in testing. And I before I will share what I believe it's happening on the market or where we are heading in that area. Maybe autonomous testing is the some maybe partial answer how we could make the testing better. But let me start with my proper introduction. So my name is Marcel Veselka. I am based in Europe, in Czech Republic. I'm Slovak, living here in Prague for a couple of years since 2009. I don't know, it's maybe 14 years already. I am founder of one software testing company. We providing testing services and training for our customers. We train more than 500 people a year in quality engineering and software testing, from some test design techniques through test automation or test management, if you wish to call it in that way. And this year I decided to start my new journey, and that was building a new startup focusing on autonomous testing. And we are building a platform with name Vopi, which is focused on autonomous testing. So let's start with that first idea I would like to share with you. I have four different, I would say, chapters or section I would like to talk about, and it's journey to the better testing. The idea of testing is pretty old. I don't know whether you know, but according some sources, the testing itself was introduced as an independent activity in 1979. Test automation was introduced in 1985. And on that time, people just find out that the manual testing and executing the system under test is heavily complicated and slow, and the regression testing might be difficult to do and keep up with developers. So there was introduction of test automation, and a couple of years ago, someone says that there is an even better way of doing testing, especially the one which is repetitive. Usually, these are the regression tests, and introduce autonomous testing. I'll be talking more about autonomous testing soon and explain what does it mean and what does it mean for me. But let's move on to the same topic with from different point of view, and I would like to share some examples that you could maybe spot on that journey, that there are many vendors or open source solutions supporting the idea. And we start maybe with paper, later use Excel, moving to some test management tools, doing the manual testing, then introduce a lot of tools, and the new tools are popping up. And for me, this is not important which tool we are using. I am interested in that topic, in that area, how we could develop or how we could improve our testing. And some ideas already matured, and I believe the test automation is already matured idea or approach, and we need to just master it or deliver it into our organizations. And I believe it's already, I would say, solved problem. So you could find on the market lot of experts, lot of experienced guys who could help you to do so. For autonomous testing is something new. We are still searching how we could deliver that, how we could implement that. I'll be talking about that on the next slides. So what's the autonomous testing? And that's not my idea. That's something all market is looking at. And I decided that maybe I'll try to make it a bit more practical today, and I'll start with definitions which are out there on the market, but I'll bring my own examples or some samples how it could look so. So according the Catalan, then they work with Deloitte and Signity. They define autonomous testing as a 6 level of testing. The level 0 is manual testing, and as you keep adding more and more automation, you could end up in autonomous testing, where computers have full control on the testing process. This is kind of science fiction because there is no such a tool, no such approach, but let's see how far it could go and what we could do for that. So let me try to make it a bit more simple and make it in my way. So if we are talking about manual testing, that would be my way of doing manual testing. If we are talking about automatic testing or automation, test automation, I could imagine it as some automatic machine. And then we have some autonomous testing. So, and now talking in testing process or test activities, we often see test automation in a way to automate test execution. Of course, there are some specific examples or cases where we automate test data preparation or test case generation, but we are still heavily focused on test execution, which is pretty big benefit for our testing practice. But what about preparation? Why we are still writing the tests manually, and we call it test automation? Why we don't generate it? Why we need to manually process all these maintenance or result handling? So this could be also maybe automated. And once we could cover that other activities by some automation algorithms, it could become more autonomous. For me, autonomy is not like some end stage, it's more goal to come closer to. And for me, autonomous testing is, I would say, extreme automation. So we are trying to automate even more and trying to challenge this status quo that we could automate only execution or regression testing, or we need to still write the test cases in some programming language. Of course, there are some record and play, low code, no code tools. These are the ideas which could bring us closer to the autonomous testing. But then the question is about the maintenance. I was trying to also build or rebuild some other pictures from other companies. You could find couple of definitions of autonomous testing by. I saw one schema from Applitools, and I also saw some other schema by. I think that it was published on Forbes, and I don't remember which company published it there. But there are a couple of definitions how testing autonomous levels could look like. And in a green, I just decide to be brave and estimate when this level could be implemented or could be ready, and we could use that fully autonomous testing. This could look pretty weird or crazy, and I believe this is where we are heading, and the question is how quickly we could get there. And let me support the idea, and then we could go into more details about the bots I'm planning to talk about most of the time today. But this is a report from Gartner. It's pretty old. It's already 3 years. And they predict that autonomous testing is one of the idea on hype cycle for Agile and DevOps. And autonomous testing was somewhere here, and they predict that it will reach this, they call it plateau of productivity in 5 to 10 years. If you don't know hype cycle, it's some prediction what are the ideas coming into our industry and could disrupt the market or bring some new ideas into the market. The important thing is that there is some, I could call it volley of that. So if you cannot pass that, it could easily die in this area. But what happened just last year? They announced another hype cycle for Agile and DevOps, and this idea was moved into, I would say, next stage. I would say next stage, and the prediction was that it's coming and it'll be here in 2 to 5 years. It might happen that it'll die on that way, but if the idea is viable, it's coming and it'll be very soon here. And I saw some other prediction that it could eat up very quickly 1/3 of our testing market, which means that 1/3 of the budgets companies spending on testing will be shifted to autonomous testing. So this is pretty interesting idea to follow and see whether this could or what could happen on the market. And while I was researching the topic and searching for how we could implement it already now, I find out that it's not so easy because there is not too many options for that. I'll be maybe share these options with you soon in my next slides. But before that, I had one question: how we could get there, how we could implement autonomous testing. And after a couple of iterations, after a couple of reading or researching the reports and articles and blogs and interviews, I find out that there are basically two options you could choose from. I believe this will become one, but nowadays you could just keep improving your existing test automation to make it more autonomous. I will just very quickly share these ideas about how we could improve our automation at the end of the presentation. But before that, I would like to focus today on on idea of introducing testing bots, which is something which I feel like it's pretty new approach. Someone could be skeptical and could say it's already here a couple of years, maybe 2 or 3 years. It's here, but this is popping up more and more, and it's becoming something which is now heavily deployed. And let me again prove that statement by some stats or some data. I don't know whether you know company Forrester. That's another company similar to Gartner. They do a lot of research and analysis and reporting. And they were posting some nice blog about Turing bots, which are basically bots which it's AI powered software helping us across entire development lifecycle. And the easiest or the simplest examples you could spot on the market are the bots you meet on GitHub projects. There are a lot of bots checking your dependencies and updating your Node.js projects, or there are some bots checking your security compliance, or some other bots to reporting to the issues you post, so it replies to your bugs very quickly and so on. And this same idea is coming also to the testing. And I just decide to very simply define that as well. So if we are talking about Turing bots for entire development lifecycle, I would like to define some software testing bots, which are basically the same softwares, AI-powered software, which helps us to test, or which help us during the SDLC or software development lifecycle, cover the test activities. And that's, again, if you search for some data, you would find out that again, from some other report, 65% of the teams are using already AI and machine learning in testing. That's a bit strange statement, but there was some addition to that, or they will be using it in 3 years. This is the result from some report by GitLab. I think it's the same report I was complaining about with these delays. And these are the top 3 workflows, as they call it, or activities they expect that they will be using AI and machine learning in testing. And I would like to focus on that second one, because what they claimed is that 53% of these companies are planning to use testing bots. So this is something people or organizations are looking at already start experimenting with. And we do the same. So let me first start with the idea how we could build that bot. Because one of the challenge on the market is that there is not too many options you could choose from. And if you know some, it would be great if you could post in a comment what are your experience with the bots in testing. But I find out that there are just couple, and the maturity of that bots are not very high, I would say. So I think that if you want to start with that now, you need to build your own bot, or heavily customize already existing bots, because it's not there yet, but it's coming, and I believe this is an idea with a big potential. So how to build a bot? You need to basically cover 2 features. One is the interaction with the application, and then you need to find out how you could automatically validate the results, or in other words, how you could implement automatic assertions. So you don't define each and every assertion, you just build something which is generic or automatically adjusted to your application. If I would go into more detail, because this is very high level, that's something what you need to think about is the application you are testing. So if you are testing UI, probably your bot need to interact with application in different way than if you are testing some APIs or some files or databases or networks. I'll be sharing with you one example where we are building bot for web app testing. So in that case, you need to be able to basically understand the UI to be able to interact with, to click on some elements, maybe to fill them with some values, and so on. For APIs, probably you need to be able to do some HTTP requests, understand the bot in general need to be able to understand what are the post methods, and maybe to be able to read some documentation, which is pretty standardized, and so on. And there are such tools where you could generate the test already now. And that's the first piece of your bot, because you need to have a second one, which is for the validation. And for the validation, you need to have something to validate some specific, I don't know how to call it, features or parameters. And for instance, when you test, I don't know, performance, you probably need to measure how quickly you are getting the response, maybe size of the response. When you test the security, there might be some other requirements. And the question is, or the question, the question and requirement to build that validation is that this need to be automatically generated as well. So once you are able to generate interaction with the app and validation with the app, which is dynamic based on the app the bot will be provided with, then you have the bot. And let me move on, because I have also some examples how it could work. And the example is based on something we are building. So I would like to reuse or benefit from the experience from there, and share the principles, how we are thinking about that. And also very short couple of second demo, how it could work. So imagine that you have this web app and you would like to test it. It's simple e-commerce application, or maybe call it, it's too generous to call it e-commerce. It's basically simple e-shop for one single drone. And you might have a couple of test cases. So maybe clicking on the link, I would like to check that the application stays on the home page. Then I could have some other where I click on home menu item and I'm getting the same screen again. Then I could have something for the gallery, something for the contact page, and then something for the login page. Or maybe I could even like to see how the checkout page looks. So doing this, I could maybe state that I have 6 very simple test cases, checking whether the page is still okay. And once I have it, I could navigate through the application and build some map. And through that map, I could navigate and generate the test cases. So once I have the test cases and the way how I could navigate through the application, I could choose which test I would like to execute. And this is not only, this example is just for the clicks, but the same is valid for the fill or swipe or scroll. It depends whether you are on mobile or web, or clicking on the checkbox and so on. So the map will probably become a bit bigger, but this is the map you could use to learn how your application works and then generate the most valuable test cases. Of course, this is also one of the features of the bot, and a big question how to generate the valuable test cases. There are a couple of approaches. I don't want to now go too much in detail. If you would be interested, we could have some follow-up session and discuss that ideas and details. But once I have this interaction done, then I need to cope with some validation or assertion. And for that, I decided to take one simple example, and it's visual validation. And for the visual validation, it might be even more interesting for the test automation engineers who are extremely good in level of automation, because sometimes for simple changes we just skip manual testing and we do only automated checks, and if all goes okay, then we deploying into production. But in some cases this is not very secure or a good idea, because imagine that you have this type of checkout page and you have some Selenium or Cypress or Playwright test which are navigating through the application using regular, I don't know, XPaths or CSS classes or IDs to interact with app. This works perfectly. You could get all that interaction, and you could also get all that assertions to be evaluated as okay or passed. But imagine that the application might change slightly, and our Selenium or Cypress or Playwright script could execute the same scenario with green light at the end, but probably you don't want to release this into production. So one advantage of this approach is that you could introduce some additional values for the automation itself, but other is that this is the simplest way. We could discuss the stability or how to cope with some stability issues, but simplest way how you could check your screens whether it's okay or not. So if you have the map and you collect the screenshots across the map, you might be able to validate whether the application works correctly. And of course, if you extend this approach to make this visual validation even more dynamic, so you collect instead of one screenshot, couple of, because maybe you test on different devices, maybe the shopping cart might be dynamic, so you don't have one expected result but more, then this is a pretty useful and powerful approach, and you could continue or you could start running your bot. I also decided to bring one more example why the visual validation might be useful, and it's especially for some specific cases like validating screens. Imagine that this is your registration form, and you need to validate all these mandatory fields, which should be all red with these red crosses. And when you do it in typical automation way, you need to basically just click on submit registration and then check whether all these fields are displayed as mandatory fields. But if you introduce the visual validation, this one could become much shorter. And instead of 16 lines of code, you just need to write 4. And then there is some saving in test automation itself. I cannot help myself. I know that this is not fitting into the flow of bots, but the visual validation might be useful also for some generic or traditional test automation in some cases. I'm not saying it's perfect and bulletproof approach for all the cases, but in some cases this might be pretty useful to follow such an approach. So once you have the validation and execution covered, then you could get some autonomous bot to execute your tests. And let me now share the idea how we are thinking about that validation and interaction. So we have simple application where you share your URL to the application you want to test. Then you start training your bot, and you are getting then some simple dashboard where you could easily run your test cases. And sometimes I'm saying that we are turning test automation into experience of exploring some pictures or gallery of pictures. So instead of having huge team of test automation engineers, sometimes not easy to hire and sometimes not easy to pay well, you could bring this to your team, and your test automation engineers might focus more on more complex scenarios or just maintaining that learning process and managing the entire setup of the platform. So this is how we are thinking about the idea of deploying bots. And then if I thought that it would be nice to share some live demo. So I wasn't so brave. So instead of that, I just record very short video to share with you how it could work. So this is our platform. We call it WOPI Commander. And you just click on button run test, and the bot executes the tests. Of course, the bot need to be configured and trained before, which is, I would say, still, to be honest, manual work. But after that, the test execution is so simple, just clicking on a button. Of course, when we are developing this and when we are introducing this, people are skeptical. So we also provide some some feature for digging into more details. So you could go into the details of the last or any test execution and see that results in traditional way. So you have a list of tests which were generated. It generates also some locators. And then it has on the left side the baseline screenshots, and it compares with the actual screenshot. And if something changed, then you could see it here. So of course, there is still some manual work. It's not fully autonomous. As I said, the autonomy is the journey to easier automation, but we believe that this is the way how we could bring more or easier way to business teams or manual testing teams. And instead of learning some programming stuff, they could use this platform. So that's the example, and that was about the bots. I believe this is the idea people now, or a lot of companies working on, including the others. I could give you some more ideas in the next slides. So as I said, there are two options. One is to building a bot to have some tool autonomously test the application, and it's still a bit primitive, but it's getting better and better. For instance, our bot could log into application if you share the credentials, but there are still some challenges we now exploring or researching how to cope with. And then another one, if you are not willing to use the bot because you are skeptical or you feel like this is not, maybe this is good idea, but it's not ready yet for us, then I thought it would be interesting for you to bring some more ideas about better automation, I would say. Because a lot of people, as I said, are focused on test execution, but I believe there are plenty of other topics we could cope with. And these are my 8 ideas and a couple of examples of different tools you could experiment with, or let's say play with, to find out how this idea could work for you, or whether it's something you would like to implement. And these are my 8. So first one is predictive test selection. We often selecting test cases manually. We are using a lot of text, prioritizing, and so on. But what if this prioritization is too static? Sometimes you adjust some feature and you would like to test that feature, and areas around more heavily than something else, so that priorities do not need to work, or if maybe you could have the tags. So these predictive selections is based on some unstructured data, like some unstructured data like text or commit message or the changes in your code, and based on that, these algorithms order your test cases based on probability of failure. And you could easily get the top 10 tests which will fail because of the change. So instead of running all the entire test suite, you just executing them as a subset, so you speed it up, or you executing them in order with the highest probability first, so you could report the bugs sooner and developers could fix it, or they could have they could get more time to fix it. The second one is generating some test cases. There are a couple of ideas. Most of them, or in this case, I think all of them, are AI based. There are also some other tools, like I know at least about one for API testing, where you could, based on some definition, generate the test cases. In this case, I brought here 3 examples. One is, maybe you all know, GitHub Copilot. That's my most favorite one. Then and I was using it a lot for a project when we were writing Gherkin code and then implementing it in Playwright, and it works pretty well. But there are also some other like autonomic nowadays by Source Labs, or of course everybody knows ChatGPT. The third idea, I believe, could help our test automation to become more autonomous. Even some people are really skeptical about it, or I would say even hate the idea, is self-healing. And in that area, there is a lot, not too many tools, but and it's mostly around Selenium. But there is at least Selenium, and I know that Parasoft building some tool called Selenic. And I believe, and I didn't see too many tools yet, but the same self-healing idea could work also for test data generation. I know that we have some fakers to do so, but I believe in the future we have so much data we could learn from that self-healing could work for test data generation as well. And fourth one, so we are in the middle of my list, are the autonomous navigation or interaction. These are the bots I was talking about, so I will not spend too much time on it. But apart from our solution, which is VOPIO, there are some others as well. So if you would like to explore the idea, I would suggest you to maybe subscribe for some trials or demos and find out more from these guys how it works and whether this would be a valuable approach for you. Of course, we could introduce the, I would say, visual object recognition. Some people claim that instead of using locators, which might be horrible to write in stable way, and they are always unstable. So there are some believers that using UI object recognition, or sorry, image object recognition would be much better idea. And there are some tools. I just state two: Ask UI or the tools AI. I was talking about visual validation a lot, so if you are interested in that topic, I would suggest to explore the Percy Apply tools or Vert, or we are also providing this. We call it Assistant as a part of our platform. This is kind of copilot for your existing test automation frameworks, so you could introduce easily visual validation into your test automation. Then I find that one idea, and I didn't find more than some YouTube videos by Paul Grossman about dynamic or magic page object model, where these page object models are not written but are rather generated. And I think he has also nice demo. It's in Java and Selenium, but I believe the idea could be taken to any framework, and any, I would say, average or a bit more experienced test automation engineer could take that and rewrite it into their own framework. And the last one, I believe this is maybe how to say that, hidden idea, or idea people don't benefit from, and that's taking data from test automation and turning it into some valuable data, some smarter reporting. And I know that there are a couple of tools already popping up, and maybe that the first one I spot or noticed was Report Portal, but nowadays there are some other, and I believe we could learn a lot from history and data we collect during the test automation. And I find out that there are plenty of organizations with pretty decent test automation, but not benefiting from the data they could. So this is my 8th idea how we could improve our test automation to become more autonomous. So let me summarize. Hopefully I have still enough time. I was trying to talk about some the journey to the better testing. I believe that we keep adding more ideas and more approaches. So from manual testing, we went to test automation, and nowadays people start talking about the autonomous testing. Even it's in pretty early stage, I believe this is something which could be very valuable if we find a way how to implement it. It takes 20 years for test automation to come into the stage where we are now. So let's see how long does it take for autonomous testing idea to become mature enough, so we will be, or it will be so obvious that we will not discuss whether this is a good approach or not. I was trying to explain what's the autonomous testing for me, and it's more journey to getting into better test automation and automate more than some completely different approach or something new. It's just better test automation. I was trying to prove that testing bots might be one of the options to get there. Even there are some other options, and I was talking also about the other options, and these are the ideas how we could improve what we already invest into or what we already have in our teams. So these were my 4 topics or 4 ideas I was excited to talk about and share with you. Hopefully it was useful for you and you found at least one idea on the list you could implement tomorrow or very soon in your teams, or at least discuss it. And with that, I would like to thank you very much for the organizers, and also to the all attendees that you stay until here. And I'm happy to discuss or answer the questions or whatever will come now. If there is still someone here.
Jump in. Yeah. Of course. Yes, Paul. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah. That was very interesting. And in saying that, I have questions. There are questions. And the first one, I'll just ask the first one straight off the bat. When you say bot, does it mean automated script? That's the first question. That's just throwing out there.
For me, bot is generic automation script, but generic, because what's typical traditional test automation, it's sometimes I call it single purpose test automation, because you do that for very specific reason. Like I would like to create a customer, or I would like to block the payment card, but it's single purpose, and that bot is generic approach. So instead of writing this specific flow, you are trying to build a bot in a way that it could spot the elements in my case, in my example, it's elements, but in general, it's to spot how it could interact. Then it interacts and evaluates after the interaction, so it asserts the thing. And of course, we could discuss whether it's part of the bot. We also discussing it within our team, whether it should get only the instructions from something we call brain, some backend system to processing all the data. So it would be just the tiny tool we able to interact with application and just read the instruction and send back the data. So data will be processed in some backend system, and in some cases some features might be built within the bot. And it's there is a lot of discussion internally what's better in terms of performance and ability to processing the data and generating the next step or next instruction to the bot. In some cases it's much better and more stable to keep it with the bot, and in some cases it's better to move the logic into some backend system where you collect all the historical data and you could process and prepare the next step instructions for the bot.
I mean, building bots is really nice, and like you say, yeah, there are a lot of things out there, ChatGPT and all this kind of thing. Well, what do you see as a time frame to say, when I'm using the word time frame here lightly, as a time frame to say I created a bot to look at my application to help out. How long do you think it would actually take for that bot to give me back some valuable uh, responses?
Okay. We start. Maybe I could share my journey or our journey in the organization. We start with small experiments because
Mm,
my first idea was, okay, let's learn something from the market and let's just use what's out there. And I find out that there are not too many options, so we start with the experiments, and it takes maybe 3 months and to get the understanding that if we want to start with something, we need to build it ourselves. And then it takes maybe 6 more months to build our first version, and it was still heavily built on top of open source solutions. And then we were challenged by another problem, because we find out that this open source is not supporting us enough to go further. So then we keep removing the open source solutions and replacing it with our components.
okay.
And I think we are still at the beginning of the journey, because if you are starting from, I would say, on greenfield or from the scratch, it takes some time. And this is still the era where there is not too many options to copy from someone, because all the companies are innovating in that area, and you cannot easily reuse something like nowadays. If you want to automate web app, there are so many options, but to introduce bots in your organization, it's not easy. And in many cases, you need to also understand your context, because that's the shortcut. If you would wait for the generic bot, which could test any web app, it might take longer. Then you would say, okay, this is my use case. I'm testing, I don't know, CRM solution. And for that particular application, it might be easier to make it not so generic and shortcut
Hmm.
to have at least something.
I mean, yeah, I mean, it's true, and I mean, when we talking about building bots, something, you have to have it have to be running. So I think it comes back to, do we actually need to build a bot? Yeah. The logic is, do we actually need to build a bot, or stay testing, doing automation testing, as opposed to going all the way to autonomous testing? Because
Uh-huh.
some projects wouldn't last that long for you to build a bot and then use it. Or you might build a bot and it's generic, and then you can't really use it on another project, because you'll have to learn, because the
Mhm.
whole application might be so different. So how do you weigh up that differences?
I think this is a great question I had at the beginning when we start, because I didn't know whether I should improve what's out there, like improving the automation frameworks, or build that bot. And I think we end up in some hybrid approach. So bot will become just another approach in our test automation. So you just deploy the bot, it collects some data, maybe then you write some other test automation which bot cannot do, or it's not able to do some complex scenarios. So it'll be some combination. I don't believe that it'll completely replace test automation very soon, but that's the way how I believe will develop in future. And another thing is that it's completely different situation when you have and I saw a lot of our customers, they have a bunch of manual testers and they are struggling to make the step into test automation. So for them, having a bot might be a huge improvement. But if you have already skilled team full of test automation engineers or SDs or whatever we'll call them, it's completely different story. Probably you don't wanna, you invest a lot, people master that, and it works perfectly. So for that, the added value introducing bot might not be so huge or so big.
Yeah, I got
So
that. And I mean, the whole thing is, I mean, in terms of what a bot is, and I'm looking at some of the comments, and Lissandra, she's saying her understanding of a bot is just, is it another, just another higher level of automation? And I mean, I'm looking at it, I kind of tend to agree with her. I tend to agree with that comment, because like you're saying, is about the, it's just about getting to do that specific thing that you could just press a button, as we just say, press a button, it will go off and do that. And that brings me to my next question in turn, um, where, and I think it's more to do with your application.
mhm.
One of the things is, could somebody, what's the technical level or technical experience necessary to would be required to use your application?
Mm-hmm. Uh, I will tell you something. Our current stage is that this is for test automation engineers, but our vision is that it will become something like, sometimes I call it like the app similar to Spotify or weather forecast. So you just press the button and play your favorite playlist,
Okay,
and it
got you.
might be this playlist is for this release. And the other comparison with that forecast is that maybe in 3 days we could spot some bugs, maybe some performance challenges or something, because we will have so many data that we could predict what will happen. You could see that it's coming. And this is very like abstract and visionary. I don't believe it will happen very soon, but this is where we are heading. This is what we are dreaming about, what we would like to build in the product. That where we see that if I have unlimited time, that's where I would go.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, that's really good in the sense, and how, like I was looking at what you're saying, and look at all the whole long list of doing things, especially the one that Paul Grossman have, where he, this magic thing that he have, and I mean, it's good. I've seen it before, and things like that. So, what advice would you give to, let's say, a new player in the group that hear about the technology and actually want to utilize it?
Uh, yeah, what do you mean by that? Like,
Okay. So I have a application to test. I have an application to test, and I'm thrown in the deep end. I want to get it done. That I've done my back to get things done, and I need to do it. How do I? Where do I go? Or do I have a choice to say, oh, I would use a bot instead of actually writing all the code? That's what I mean.
yeah, but that would be, I think that would be pretty nice idea. I know that there is no such a tool that you just provide a URL and it's a test for you. But this is what we are trying
But to do
work on,
that
or
before.
not trying. We are working on that, and we the, the vision, or that what we are fully on is how we could make it, and we are coming closer and closer. I cannot predict how long does it take, but you see nowadays you see the ChatGPT acceleration, and this is just start. So with these type of algorithms we could do so many cool stuff. And for instance, we have some prototypes, like we generate the steps in test case, and I was just prototyping that we take that steps, and via REST API, I ask ChatGPT if these are the steps, what could be the name of the test, and it
Okay.
gives me the name. Or another experiment. These are the locators of the fields for the form. What data I could use, or what are the data types? So you have, I call it embedded AI, where you
Okay.
could
Yeah.
easily build a bot which is able to chat with some other tool to give you the answers. Or maybe I could say, this is the CRM system. So maybe you could ask some backend system, okay, what are the top 10 scenarios for testing CRM? And you would get that list. And if you have the list, then maybe you could keep going further and further. And both do not need to be, now it's pretty scripted. All the maps are generated. We are learning how that work. But there are plenty of other ways how you could build it. And then it's very, I wouldn't say very simple, but it could be very powerful if you introduce all these features using by bot. These all ideas I was sharing, it could be used by bot, and it could be embedded there. So you don't need to even understand it's there. You would just get the report. These 100 test cases executed. It was these test cases was selected and designed automatically, and you will get just report with the results. And
Yeah.
you
I
might
mean,
say, "I like it or don't like it," and next time you will get even better report if you give the feedback to the platform.
I mean, and it's also so true, because like I say, like I have Classy.js, and it's a complete test automation framework. It does a lot of bits and pieces in it, in its own straight out of the box. And one of the things I was experimenting with is using ChatGTP in there to say, all right, here's my feature. Give me a few scenarios. And what I realize, and like you say in your demos and your researches, is that it gives you a lot of generic stuff that it still needs some manual intervention. And because unless it have that actual application that you're going to test, then it just comes generic that you you would just use and refactor to suit your particular case. Come like you ask a question, you have something to do, you go online and say, how do I do X? And they give you a lot of different ways you can do it, and you grab, oh, that will work, and you refactor to suit yourself. So that's really good, and we know, like you say, we know autonomous testing is gonna be it's a long way out.
Yeah,
We know it's a long way out, but the idea that we could create a little bot, or we could use one of the AI bits out there to do it. I mean to help what we have now is much. So my question to you basically is: we have a lot of, and I'm saying it straight, we have a lot of people out there saying, "Oh, I have a AI tool that is do X," or it's all this. Or what are your thoughts on
hmm
something on things like that?
I don't want to be. I'll try to be nice and
Diplomatic.
polite, but very open. Uh, AI is brilliant idea, but it's really stupid the way how we are coping with that. Because I believe this brilliant idea will be powerful and useful only if we find a way that it's so simple and obvious that we are using it and don't discussing it. Why we are not discussing databases, or why we are don't discussing some Python scripts or methods
Yeah,
or
exactly.
languages. It's or why we are not discussing automation in testing anymore. It's like we are discussing, but the question is not whether. We often discuss how, but I believe this need to be become like standard component in our approach, and then we are there. So my thought about AI is that if this will be just buzzwords in PowerPoints and everywhere else, that we are not still there. But once it will become like obvious part of all other frameworks or tools, that'll become useful. And I believe the idea of ChatGPT nowadays, or any other algorithms outside the tools, it might be brilliant, but until it's not embedded or integrated and packaged and baked into our tools, we are not there yet. So I believe when it happen, then it'll be super powerful and super useful. So we see the signal.
It's true. We share that same sentiment. I share that same sentiment with you. Well, I mean, we could go on and on with this forever and a day. And I think what we need to do is to have a session just about the whole AI, generative AI thing inside test automation, and we kind of run out of time. So, what is good to say thanks again to Zapotec for all this, and Marcel, thank you very much for your session. And I know it generated a lot of thoughts in people's head, especially mine.
Yeah.
I'll show you. I have a whole page of notes, you know, to look at. But yeah, thank you very much for this, and thanks again to the people at Zapotec for giving us this, you know, this opportunity to do this. So before we lock off, I give you have 30 seconds to wrap up for the audience. Go.
Okay, so thank you very much for having me. Thank you for Zapotec, and also Larry to you to hosting us. It was brilliant event. Hopefully people enjoyed with me, as I was excited to talk about that. And I believe this is a big opportunity for all of us to play with some new tools and searching for even better testing we have. And I believe you will enjoy it, and wish you all a lot of fun in testing. As I said at the beginning, 19 years, and I still enjoying and exploring that different corners and highways of ideas. So thank you, and hopefully see you in some other virtual or physical event.
Thank you very much, Marcel. And the pleasure was of having you. And with that, I will say thanks again to Zapotec. And I am Larry Goddard, the creator of Classy JS, and I'm a test automation architect at Oxford University Press. And just like Marcel, I have just over 20 years in doing this, and as you see the smile on my face, it's something that we enjoy doing, and we enjoy giving back to the community in settings like these. You know where to reach us. You can reach us on LinkedIn. Mostly you can just find us there. And yeah, so thanks again for everyone for joining. And thank you, Zapotec, for giving us the opportunity. Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.